Trucks? You damn right we're talking trucks. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. So welcome in and get ready as we get you prepared from a betting perspective as the series goes to North Wilkesboro next on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the NASCAR Betting Preview Show, Truck Series edition. Phil, I'm pumped to have you here. It's usually you and me just talking and chopping it up a little bit. I mean, if anybody is new to the Truck Series podcast that Phil and I do each week, you're going to be in for a real thrill because Phil is always dialed in with the stuff that he brings to the table. I can't tell you the amount of DMs, messages, stuff I get from, hey, what is Phil on? Is he on anything else new? What is Phil saying? So it's our insider. This is like our Woj. This is our Adam Schefter of the Truck Series. So this is Phil the Full Tank with Phil podcast, and make sure you guys follow him not only on X but Instagram as well. So Phil, how the hell are you?
I'm like a dog, like pent up in a cage, ready to go, man. It's been a while since I was able to hop on and talk gambling, and I'm pumped. Wanted to do this last night, man. We didn't have odds, so all day today I was just like ready to go. I see SC chirping me, man. These kind of look like Mickey Mouse ears, sort of.
They do. They do.
I'll break out my Lightning
like
McQueen shirt next week. Yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, man, I think you've got a tough job tonight. This is the first time we're doing this live. And it's because we're the trucks are the only points paying race this weekend. So in my opinion, biggest spotlight. And you got a tough job because I feel like I'm going to be able to ramble tonight. So you got to reel me back in when I start going off on a tangent. Keep us on pace tonight.
I will.
But yeah, I'm fired up. This is going to be really fun.
Well, here, I'll tell you this much. We're not going to go past an hour. So we're going to keep it within an hour.
You got places to be, my friend.
I got places to be. I got things I got to do because I'm going to actually be headed to North Wilkesboro right after we're done recording here. So I got a lot of stuff going on. I got to finish packing and making sure the family's set up so I can get out tomorrow. Humble plug. Tomorrow's my birthday, 35. So I'm traveling on my birthday. How about that?
Bury the lead.
Little birthday special here for us, doing this in a special way on the show. So before we get into the entry list, I want to go back to last year. Now, first question to you is going to be, we know that it's been a repave. So do you handicap anything different from what we saw last year? But I do want to touch on, let the floor open to you. What were some of your takes of what we saw last year as the trucks, went to this short track here? And what do you think we'll expect this week?
Yeah, it's interesting kind of thinking back about last year because I kind of have a vivid memory of last year. Two things. One was how many Cup drivers were in that race last year. And we're going to talk about the entry list this year in a little bit, but it plays a bit of a factor into how we're looking at this race because there are so many guys. We had Larson, Wallace, Chris Bell, Byron, and then you got guys like Zane Smith, Hocevar, who are no longer, they're not racing in this race. And those were major players in the race from last year. So all of those guys being out this time around definitely plays a factor to how we're looking at, what went down last year, how we're using that, how we're handicapping it. And then the second thing that I'm kind of looking back and remembering was like Larson obviously was your winner, driving the 7 truck. It wasn't as dominant as what he did on Sunday in the All-Star race. Like that was a mopping. But what I remember was the fact that we had a major, quasi-major incident, took out folks like Eckes and a couple other guys. But Bubba Wallace made a strategy play to stay out. And I think, we were thinking like, oh, he's going to get run down because the tires are going to go to shit. But he was able to kind of survive and almost like hold off Larson for enough time. Larson was going to catch him. There was no doubt about it. But he was able to kind of surprise a little bit, fight back a little bit, hang in there for like second place. If there wasn't a super late caution, he would have finished second. Survives the restart on that play and finishes for the top 5. So I think that was a bit of a surprise looking back at it. And with the weather, that's what's going to make it tough, because the weather is going to wreak havoc on NASCAR officials all week.
Yep.
When it comes to practice, you got to imagine this is a points paying race. So these truck drivers are just foaming at the mouth to get on this repave. I saw SC's already bringing up the repave. That you got to figure guys are dying to get out there. And if this weather doesn't cooperate, how are they going to handle it? It's going to be tough to throw these guys out there on a completely new track with no practice.
Right.
So rain, you got a new track. That's going to maybe bring some strategy into it. Shorten race. If they don't get started on time, if they're starting Sunday morning, but they're going to clouds roll in, it's going to makes it difficult to handicap, because that's like the super unpredictable stuff. But you got to believe it's going to make this whole weekend interesting. So that's kind of the takeaways, just the amount of cup drivers last year, the fact that strategy play did actually work out for the one truck.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And I think that was a good illustration of looking back and just kind of something that we can maybe look forward to, because we talked about it in the pre-show. We kind of got bit last year. It wasn't really one of our better races. That wreck caused a lot of issues. There were some other guys in the mix that we just maybe were fading, but everything changed. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend. And let's look at the entry list, because I think it's an important element, as this is a very special event where, not oftentimes do we get so many guys dipping down into the series here. And what I'm going to do is, for anybody that's watching on the YouTube, we're going to kind of go through these. There's a lot of guys that we're going to be highlighting and talking about. And, I'm going to rattle some of these off, and then Phil, feel free to, make a comment wherever you want. But Brendan Queen, he's going to be in the one truck. We've seen the one truck has been like the musical chairs this year. And I had an opportunity to talk to Queen, Brian and I, the All Things Go podcast, and great guy. It's really cool to see his ascent through the ranks. And I know rain, like you talked about, Phil, has been an issue down there at North Wilkesboro. It's plagued them all week long, and really excited for this kid to get an opportunity in a big stage here. So he's going to be in the one truck. You got Sammy Smith in the 7. You got Eric Almirola in the 16. You got Ross Chastain back, winner of last week at Darlington. He's in the 45. It's just a couple names there that are just going to really highlight what happens this weekend. So what kind of comes to mind for you first there, Phil?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of break down some of the non-truck regulars here.
Yep.
And we'll work our way down to Brendan Queen, but we'll start with Chastain, driving the 45, coming off of a win last week, which is huge. And he finished 9th in this race last year. He didn't lead a lap in that race. And, that was something that I wouldn't have expected him to really light the world on fire in the race last year. But now I feel like I have different expectations of Ross Chastain. We can kind of maybe talk about him later when we get to some of the betting, but I'm going to talk about track comps in a little bit, but he doesn't necessarily like speak to you like when you're talking about this style of track. I mean, if you're looking at cup races on like 9 quote unquote comp tracks, he has a win at Phoenix and 2 top 10s in 9 starts. So not exactly like, lighting the world on fire, but I think from what we're seeing him this season, it changes the narrative around Chastain. So we'll get to him a little bit. The next driver is Sammy Smith, and he's driving the 7 truck. The 7 truck is just a perennial powerhouse. It's an all-star truck.
Yep.
You always have to give it the time of day, no matter who's in it. But I got burned by Sammy Smith a little bit at Martinsville. He was running Martinsville for good reason. He had a lot of great history at Martinsville. And I don't want to call it laying an egg because I think he finished like 8th. But didn't necessarily do what we thought he was going to do. He like started 13th and finished top 10, but that's not what I expect the driver of the 7 truck to bring to the table each week. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. If you're looking at Xfinity comps to this, in 6 races, he has 2 poles, so he starts pretty well, and 1 top 5, 5 top 10s, 5 straight top 10s in the Xfinity series on tracks that are quote unquote similar to this. So 9.3 average finish. It's tough to read on Sammy Smith. We'll talk about specifically getting into some comps in a little bit. So he's a tough one to read. Almirola driving the 16 truck. Almirola's first start in the Truck Series since 2012. Last fall, the last time he ran full time in trucks was 2010. Okay. So long time ago, before this guy was even in a truck, and before the last time he was doing it for a significant amount of time, 14 years. But in that season, 2010, he had 2 wins, 11 top 5s, 21 top 10s out of 23 races. That's pretty damn good. So he's no slouch. When he was in the Truck Series, he was no slouch. And on these types of tracks, the 6 races back then, he had 2 top 5s and 6 top 10s. So, there's that. I don't think that's anything you can write home about, but it is what it is, right? He was good back in the day. The 16 truck, that's another factor. So we're going to talk about Almirola in a bit, and we'll get there. 16 did okay last year with Ankrum, but they got caught up in that wreck with Eckes and company. So there's that. Then let's finish off with Brendan Queen. He's in that all-star truck. If you're not aware of Queen, he's a 26-year-old. In 2019, he started in ARCA at Daytona and thought he had a full-time ride that year and ended up just racing that one race, finished 35th at Daytona. It had to do with finances for that team. So it fell through. Last year, this is the reason why he's in this race, I'd have to imagine, right? I mean, you talked to him. But last year, Cars Tour, before this race last year, he won this race. And just listen to some of these names that are in this race that Queen was your winner in this Cars Tour. Dale Jr., Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Chase Briscoe, Lane Riggs, Caden Honeycutt, Tyler Ankrum, Ross Chastain. This guy, Queen, crazy, is your winner. Yeah. So it's really cool, like you said, that this guy's getting a shot driving the one truck. And just say, see what you can do. In that Cars Tour season, he had 4 wins, finished second in the standings. So, hey, this will be fun. I guess you can kind of sit it like, remember what was it? The tour last year that got canceled on ESPN. What was that thing that we used to handicap from last year? SRX. How they used to have like the hometown hero type guy on each track. Like this to me is like an opportunity, like a hometown here. Not that he's from here, but you get the picture. So pretty cool that he's getting that shot, and we'll see how he does. So yeah, that's just kind of the breakdown of some of the non-truck guys I wanted to get into there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you did, and it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see how he performs. I mean, very comfortable, obviously, racing at this kind of level, especially this type of track. And there's one thing I want to touch on, and Troy, our guy SC, had a good question. Do trucks have rain tires? And yes, they do. They actually get 3 sets of rain tires. The Truck Series does. So they're going to be racing on Saturday. I assume that they'll be racing. Obviously, we know it now, but anybody new, they don't race when it's raining. They only race if it's damp. So I feel like there'll be a window somewhere. There's a lot happening on track activity, obviously, on Saturday. Do they bump it up? Do they just kind of run it into maybe a little bit more of what the Cup Series is doing with their all-star stuff? But there's going to be a window. They're going to get it in. I'm not worried about that at all. So that'll be good from that perspective. So there was also another question I saw, and anybody that's listening, whether you're on X, whether you're on YouTube, ask away. Ask, if you have specific questions, matchups, groups, head-to-head, whatever it is, ask whatever. We'll dissect it live. This is the beauty of you listening live to the show, and anybody listening to the podcast, you get to enjoy some of our conversations here. So, one other thing I want to get to from the tire test is, go ahead, Phil. I saw you pointing at something.
Well, SC, the comment that you just had on the board there, was it Heim last year that won in the rain race?
Martinsville.
He won Martinsville. And as I'm about to talk about, that's pretty damn important. So
let's go right into it.
Yeah, we'll get to that with the track stats, but put a pin in that. Because it was Corey Heim, and I don't know if Ross was in that race, but you know who was the big boy, Kyle Busch. And he was able to hold Kyle Busch off in a shortened rain race. So that's an important comment that SC made there.
So
but
then how about
tire notes, right? I mean, that's where you wanted to take it next. There's a good YouTube video out there. I think the channel is Cup Scene, and kind of funny because they're talking about the Truck Series here, but the trucks brought the big dogs, one from each manufacturer out to test this new repave, the restructure, the North Wilkesboro.
Like 2 months ago.
2 months ago, it was Corey Heim, it was Christian Eckes, and it was Ben Rhodes. Like I would have bought a ticket to that with a 12-pack and a hot dog, dude. Just sit in the stands. Like, give me that all day. They had some pretty interesting comments. They had a press conference afterwards, and I don't know if it was anything like different than you'd expect, but we had Christian Eckes saying things like, his notes from last year, the line that he planned on taking and the marks that he was trying to hit last year completely goes out the window. There's a lot more grip this year, and just the line that he was planning on taking is not the same. So the fact that these guys had extra track time is definitely going to play. He wasn't trying to say this, but this is how I'm interpreting it. Like, that's a pretty big deal, limited track time as is. These guys got all that. Ben Rhodes Corey Heim was saying, he still expects it to be tough to pass, like one line. But he said, without a doubt, a lot more grip, and he does expect it to be more racy, whatever racy means. So there's that. So we'll see. I think they expected back then, they said, there's going to be some lower series running some races, hopefully putting some work in on the track, but with the weather, who the hell knows how that's going to play out. It doesn't seem like that's going to fit. So so that, give that look though. If you are really interested in that, you get the full breakdown from those guys with their press conference, and it's just kind of interesting to listen to.
So one of my favorite things that you do, Phil, is you go over truck stats, really kind of highlighting not only the track, but some, tangible things that we, the bettors, and we, the fans, can really dive into. So from a truck stat standpoint, try saying that 10 times fast. What do you got for us this week?
Well, so the comps, there's not much to it, right? Like track stats. What I like to do on my podcast for the Cup Series is go through like starting positions and like what's the data on where people started from. We don't have that, right? They've been here one time, and it was Kyle Larson who got the victory, starting from like 8th. So we don't have that luxury. According to iFantasy Race, it's a unique track, and they're just getting back to it, so it's really tough to comp. But they do throw out there tracks like Phoenix, tracks like Gateway, Martinsville, Richmond. So those are things that we can point to if we're grasping at straws here, like we are, right? We got to use something to kind of play off of. So that's important. Martinsville, I think, is important because we've already gone to Martinsville this year. And what I wanted to do was go back, and even though last year's Martinsville race was shortened by rain a little bit, I wanted to look at the green flag speeds to compare and contrast them with North Wilkesboro to see like what we could find out. Like, is there anything that we can, and basically what that does is confirms that if you're generally fast or good at Martinsville, you were pretty fast. It translated well to North Wilkesboro, like pretty much dead on. The guys who were fast there were fast, with the exception of guys who got into like Christian Eckes, got wiped out, and that kind of hurt him. So where I'm going with that is this year's Martinsville race, I think we can kind of lean on a little bit more than you might have expected. Just like generally, if you were fast this year at Martinsville, let's put that a little feather in the cap as an extra boost. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that we can take away and try to apply moving forward here.
I like that. Yeah, no, I think that's good. And the other thing too, when you're looking at that, Phil, I think you can go back even the year before at Martinsville and look at when William Byron won his truck race, because the temperatures were extremely cold. It almost felt like a new racing surface where everything was kind of fresh, and was a little different there. So I think you could even apply that one. But let's talk about some bets now. Why everybody's here to listen to the show and get kind of dialed in. So, as you and I typically do, we look at the odds board a little bit. Where do you want to start tonight? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go with a guy that you've been just itching, chomping at the bit to talk about in Ty Dolla Signs? Or do you want to go a different direction?
I think we got to go there. I know our buddies from the NASCAR Gambling Podcast are on here. They've been commenting, and I know I haven't listened to their episode this week, but I know that they like to fade Ty Majeski, and it's for a good reason. He's really been paying them some money by doing that
last week.
100%. But I'm gonna go to that well this week. I really think Ty Majeski is someone you need to have. And look at that. They're not yeah, there we go. That's all we have to stomach for. Top 5. Okay, that's fine, right? So just to hit you with some of the numbers that I was just looking up. I mean,
please,
7-1 to win the race, plus 175 and minus 140. They got him at minus 120. So good there for a top 5. And he's also in a group bet that I can try to pull up here in a second. But let's talk about why I'm on Ty. And do you have any disagreement? Like, are you on Ty at all this week? Do you have any qualms with me going down this route?
No qualms at all. No, I like it because it almost cashed last week. Actually, before I kind of give a funny recap of last week, but yeah, I'm all in for it. So go ahead.
Well, I just need him in some sort of way, right? Like my strategy for the Truck Series has been like a lot less outright plays and more of the props, I guess you would call them, like the finishing positions, head to heads, that sort of thing. And when I was doing some research and seeing what I'm getting here with Majeski, all I was doing when we were texting each other back and forth, like, when are the odds gonna come out? I was just foaming at the mouth, like, who are they going to match Majeski up against? Because Eckes and Heim are going to be matched up against each other. Who are they going to match them up against? And most of the books in PA that I see, he's not in a matchup. Like, it's like, what the hell? So in any case, I digress. He finished second in this race last year to Kyle Larson. And second is kind of like the theme that you're getting here. He's kind of like the bridesmaid when we're getting into all these stats here. And also, when I'm listing off things like average finish the driver rating from last year's race, green flag speed from last year's race, I'm taking out anybody who's not in the race this year. So the guys like Larson, I'm talking about, I'm ranking them who's in the race from last year, in it again this year. Just to see how they stack up against each other. But second is definitely the theme here. Looking at the last 6 comp tracks. So again, Martinsville, Phoenix, Richmond, and North Wilkesboro and Gateway. So Martinsville's in there twice. He's got 4 top 5 finishes. That is most in the Truck Series in that time span. And 3 of those finishes were second place. So he's like right there knocking on the door, 9.0 average finish. And that's because he wrecked at Gateway. He finished like 30th. He's second in driver rating in that time span. And it's just by a smidge, like under a point in average driver rating behind Corey Heim. And second in driver rating out of everyone last year's race. Second in green flag speed in the 2023 race. Martinsville this year, 2024, he was second in green flag speed. Win the race. Ryan Stevens, his website has him ranked second in the pre-race. So everything's second. And there you see Andrew putting it in the chat. He finished 30th because he made a bonehead move against Zane at Gateway last year. So thank you, Andrew. Good stuff. Good memory. And so that adds to the point. Like, this guy's going to be a factor in this race. So however you like him, pick your poison, right? Cody and Rod like top 5. I actually really enjoy top 5, and they said you can get that on Bet365. I'm going to have to go over the bridge to get that in Jersey, but minus 140 on Caesars, if you're not in a position to do that. I like the top 5 bet, but the top 3 bet, honestly, at plus money, you can see he's been doing that. finishing second. So if
Mhm.
you don't have faith for him to get the victory and like really punch that ticket to get over that hurdle, since all that drama from last year, he's been snake bit. I think, he's got to be in your card in one way or the other. So for me, I guess my favorite play would be a top 5 if you can get that
Okay.
great number.
Yep.
But if you can't get that number, I would take top 3 even at plus money.
Yeah, and for anybody that wants to tail Phil, bet 365 minus 120 top 5 right now. Also found on Hard Rock minus 120 as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you were talking Phil about top 3s on Hard Rock right now. And I know it's not available in every state, but some of the key ones it is. Plus 185 is the best price I've found out there.
Oh, yeah.
If you shop it around, it's about plus 180 everywhere else. So definitely something to keep an eye on with Majeski. And I believe, hey, last week we saw something. Look at what happened a couple weeks ago where, Buescher was in position to get the win at Kansas, came back to Darlington, really fought. I mean, really was his race and got into it there with Reddick. Kind of the same thing with Majeski. Majeski was out sailing. I mean, it was no caution comes out. He's got the dub. Caution comes out. We all know what happened. Ross then goes on to win. He picked a bad spot. So he's kind of beating himself up just a little bit about that. I think he comes back even hungrier, going to a short track. This is a short track specialist. So, Phil, for all those reasons, I'm on it as well. I have been also trying to shop around to find where the best win price is. Personally, the only thing I'm seeing across the board, and maybe somebody in the chat can help me out, but I'm looking at 650 across the board. So 6.5 to 1 is what I've been able to find. Who's the next guy you want to talk about, Phil?
Well, so another way to play Majeski, and he's 7-1 on Superbook is where I saw it.
Thank you.
But he's also in a group bet on Betfred, and this is an interesting one. He's up against it's plus 240 to beat 3 drivers: Amarola, Chastain, and Sanchez.
Got it popped up. Yep.
And we're going to talk about a few of those guys, actually all of those guys, in a second in various ways. But I just feel like Majeski's ceiling is higher than all of those guys. So if he can put together a goddamn race and finish it, I feel like he's going to finish second in this race. So are any of those guys going to win? I don't think so. So there's another way to get plus money on a guy who I think is like top notch in this race, plus 240. Go ahead.
Who do you think his closest competitor is of that group?
I think Sanchez.
Okay. Okay, not Ross, because Ross won last week in that 45 again, just kind of continuing that momentum along, was in the race last year. Just trying to throw some things to maybe poke holes in that.
We're gonna have money on Ross tonight.
Good. Okay, good.
We'll leave it at
that. Say less, yeah. King.
All right. So you mentioned the next guy. We're gonna talk about another top 5. And then we'll get into some head-to-heads. And just kind of rip and run here. Like Perfect. I said, you got to keep me honest. I could ramble all night about trucks.
No, you're good. I put a timer on you, so we're good.
So this is gonna sound crazy, but plus 400. Okay, maybe a little sprinkle on Chase Purdy. This is another guy that I was hoping to get a head-to-head matchup on because I really feel strongly about Chase versus one guy. And the guys that you would typically have him matched up against, like in a head-to-head matchup, like Stuart Friesen or Matt Crafton, I feel like Chase Purdy's going to take him down this week. Chase Purdy, you know me, if you've been talking with me all week, I haven't been high on Chase Purdy all year. I've actually faded him. Yeah.
Ever.
So looking at his numbers here, he's actually tied with Christian Eckes for second most top 5s in the series on the 6 comp tracks. He's got 3 top 5s and he has 5 top 10s. That number is most in the Truck Series. Nobody has 5 top 10s in that. Wow. And I'm already getting shirts. Has anyone seen I feel strongly about Chase Purdy before? Probably not. Maybe Kyle Busch when he hired him to race for his truck team. But, if I'm in the same category as Kyle Busch, I guess I'm doing well. But look at, what he did last year. And by the way, average finish in that time frame, those 6 comp tracks, 8.5. That's second out of everyone behind Corey Heim. He was 7th in driver rating in that time span. And again, we just need him to get to that top 5 number, and you're cashing a pretty big ticket. Last year, he started 24th in this race, but he practiced well. He
Okay.
practiced like third. So there was something there. And now, if let's pretend that weather's not a factor, right? These guys are practicing on Friday, I believe, right, Derek? So there's going to be a pretty good time span between, practice and qualifying. So there was something there in practice that you had. And he went out and he proved it. I mean, he ran quite well. He finished 8th. So he got up from 24th to 8th. I don't remember exactly what his race looked like, but he got the 8th place finish. That's not going to cash this bet, but it puts you in the ballpark. I mean, that's what this guy's doing at 4-1 here. And for these comps that we're talking about, he has 3 back-to-back third place finishes. Phoenix to end the season last year and third at Martinsville in 2024 this year, where he had 7th in green flag speed so far this year. So this is not a fluky guy. This is not a situation where, he was fast at Martinsville this year, but he's pretty damn consistent, like upper echelon of like the B league of the Truck Series. So for a plus 400, not too shabby here for Chase Purdy. And he's in a group bet plus 265 versus Enfinger, Ankrum, and Rhodes. I don't know. Ankrum kind of scares me in that group bet. So I think I'm fine with kind of like a sprinkle on a top 5 and just say like, hey, go do your thing. And if it hits, great. The other thing is he was third in the entire race last year, including like Larson and the rest of the Cup guys, in fastest late in the run. So if we get longer runs and he can put that setup together again, figure it out, that's a big deal. So first out of everyone who is returning to run this race. So Chase Purdy, maybe if you're playing DFS, like keep him in mind because I think that's a pretty good number on him for a top 5.
So you said that group again, that's on Betfred. So SC, looking over at you. I know you're a Betfred guy that listens week in and week out. So you're able to grab that there, which is really cool. And hopefully some of the books even open up more opportunities with Purdy included. And you asked about practice. It's actually Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then the Cup Series will have their practice qualifying sessions as well. So we'll see a lot of action on Friday, weather pending. I didn't get to hear what you said, what the weather looked like really on Friday as I'm driving down. Is it good? Is it great? Is it terrible? It's terrible.
Well, let's see. Friday, we got 75 degrees, PM showers, 66% chance of rain.
Yeah.
So, it's all kind of the same deal. Like Saturday, 62% chance of rain, thunderstorms in the area. Sunday, we've got showers, 57%. Like
that's fine.
There's nothing that's like 100% chance, So to me, that's the thunderstorms is the problem because then you got
the
lightning,
issue.
and that's the thing that's a killer.
That's the issue there. So that'll be good. I mean, it's interesting too. I mean, when you say things about guys that you're never on or you're constantly fading, I think it's time for everybody to just take a step back and just say, yes, Phil, lead us. You're leading us to water. We will drink from it. And if this hits, it is get your flowers, walk around, take the parade. But if it misses because it was a decent long shot. It was a 4-1 option. It was, whether you're doing the group bet as well. So you talked about the metrics. You didn't just say, hey, last week he was good and I think he's going to have a fast car. No, you looked at the metrics, you dove into them. So I like that you brought that to the people. Are we going another long shot somewhere? Or is there something else you wanted to touch on at all? Or what? I like that we're not chalk. So this is good.
Well, that's the thing. I like talking about guys that we don't talk about every week, right? Like,
true. Well, we talk about Purdy, but we usually talk about him the other way.
The other way, yeah. There you go. We'll save just like kind of quick hitters for the very end. I mean, there's some guys that you could take like absolute Hail Marys on here in a second. But let's get into a couple head-to-heads.
Love that.
Chastain versus Amarola. Okay. Have you looked at this at all? Like, do you have a side that you want? Because I'm on this already.
I believe that you are. And the best price, if you're on Almirola, Caesars right now, plus 125. If you're wanting something on Ross, minus 115 a piece, bet 365 has them offered. To be honest, I know you're a guy that, win on Saturday or win on Sunday, fade the next week. Are you going that route or are you double dipping on Ross? I like that. So I would have been on the Ross side. I'm not on anything yet, but maybe talk me into something.
No, I'm on Ross in this matchup, dude. It's just too many things. Like I feel like I could debate or discuss both sides of this coin.
Okay.
And both of those debates land on Ross Chastain winning this matchup. I took this on Caesars at -115, and I guess you said it
Wow.
changed.
It's ballooned. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
-155
I don't see
it
this.
is.
I don't
Yeah.
see this as an even matchup. So
Okay.
you mentioned Ross. Like, I think we said going into last week's race, like we hit on a Ross bet last week. It wasn't to win, but I think I said, like, I'm sick of just like, not playing Ross. We got to get in on him. And be careful of the short track king. Phil is
Is the
Amarola the
comment.
short track king?
Well, he is a short track specialist as
Yeah,
well.
like New
And when he dips
Hampshire.
down, but before you continue, I do have a question because I think it's very important to ask. Now, he's in Hattori Racing. He's in the 16 truck Toyota, probably right where you were going. We're in the same place. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so Ross building momentum, winning that race. He's raced 2 races so far this year. We've had the race last week that he won, and then a top 5 at Coda. So it's not like he's just dropping down and just running laps for no reason. Like he's getting good finishes, not worth fading. Then you've got Almirola, who has not driven a truck in over a decade. So let's not like downplay that, right? I want to use an example from last week rather, at Darlington.
Okay.
Kyle Busch, a truck driver, like the all-time greatest truck driver, had never driven at Darlington before. And what happened in that race? He was out in the trucks, had never driven at Darlington before, and he was out in 2 laps. Like, let's just not make it seem like it's so easy for these guys to just like come in and run these trucks. And Almirola is not hopping into the 7 truck. He's hopping into the 16 truck, which is not even running like really full time. Like they're not even this was Ankrum's truck from last year. I don't remember, like, I'm not smart enough to know, like, have they been running? Has anyone ran the 16 so far this year? Like, what's going on? I can't, the equipment by itself favors Chastain in this matchup. Then you've got a guy who has been running in this series versus a guy who has not. And that favors Chastain. Then you got a guy who just won. Like, he's not just running in the series, he's winning in the series.
Right.
Versus Amarola, who, like, dude, I love Amarola. Love what he's doing in the Xfinity series. I love watching him. He's actually one of the reasons why I've been watching Xfinity on a more regular basis. Like, I loved seeing him win that race early in the year. So I'm not down, saying I'm not a fan of Almirola, but I just don't see the path. I don't see it at all. Like, Almirola is not Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch couldn't even go to a track that he hasn't been to in a truck and put together 2 laps. So, I'm going with Ross. I already took it -115. So shop around, see where you can get him if you're on board with that pick here. So, and looks like, NASCAR Gambling Podcast guys said that the 16 has not run this year. So, I mean, am I crazy, Derek? Like, isn't that all leading you to the Chastain side of this?
Yeah, I think the edge is definitely Chastain. To your point, like, if you can get it at even money, like we can bet 365. We'll shop around and see where else it is. That is an advantage for Ross. Now, my only thing, and I'm looking up on their website, I'm gonna try to figure out where I can find this, but my only one question is, Almirola is not going to dip down on an off week just to ride a ship box. Like, I almost wonder, is it a Tricon truck, one of the backups, and they're getting that fielded that way? Just maybe throwing that out of, like, that could be our devil's advocate. However, we've seen a lot of really good momentum with Nice in the 45 the last 2 weeks now. So I'm thinking, even with the 45 there, and Troy just asked a really good question live. He's saying, hey, who's got the better pick crew? Well, the 45 does. I don't even have to. That is a good question. And that is an edge I don't even have to look up, because there's no way, unless maybe actually, now I'm going to fight myself here. unless one of the Cup Series teams or the Xfinity teams are really diving down to really kind of take care of that. So that's a good question, Troy. I don't know that officially. My response would have been initially going to the 45, but now I'm leaving myself a little questioned.
So I like this game. Like I like these conversations. Mm-hmm. Like there's probably smoke and fire to that.
Oh,
right? Yeah. Tricon, Hattori. But if that's the case, right? If you're Elric Amarola, okay, and they're like, yo, I don't know why he's racing in this race, because if you're Tricon or you're, that group as a whole, why wouldn't you put him in the one truck, right? Okay. Why would he not run the one truck? If the pitch to Eric Amarola is like, yo, we're going to put you in a Tricon car, he'd be like, why the fuck am I not in the one truck? That's the truck. If Amarola was in the one truck, I'd have way more confidence, because the one truck has a crew that's been setting up a truck every week for a different driver. They've been running half decent. The 16's starting cold. Like, I feel like this is Muddy Ducks too. Like Julie the Cat Gaffney, cold goaltender coming in to face Gunnar Stahl. Like that's the situation that we have here. A cold team setting up a truck out of nowhere for Eric Amarola to come in. I just don't understand it. So yeah, there's probably something to it. There's probably money, follow the money and you'll find it. But if the pitch was like, yo, you're going to be in a Tricon truck, why isn't he driving the one? Like, I don't understand that, because Queen could have easily slipped right into the 16 and been like, look at me. I'm the ringer. So I find that difficult to back Amarola. So we'll see. This is one where practice will maybe tell us something. I looked at practice last year, and Ross didn't necessarily practice well last year. He didn't bring much in practice and qualifying last year. So I'm not scared even if Ross practices like 19th. Sure. That's still not something I'm worried about.
A place that could be hard to pass. We just don't want Almirola getting top 4 and Chastain starting 20th. I don't think, because that's going to be a long thing to really make up, especially if weather comes into play and some of those different elements. I'm tailing you. I'm gonna tail you on it. So my money is in your hands with that one for sure, with Ross, because I just think that 45 truck, what we've seen over the last few weeks, says something. And him doing this race last year, coming back, doing it again this year after a win in the trucks, I just think, man, I could be picking up some watermelon seeds, at Victory Lane on Saturday night.
Well, that would be impressive if he were to do it 2 weeks in a row. I mean, because he kind of looked into it, like you said. You mentioned that.
Low key. The last, I want to say, however many races I've been to, when I was in Nashville, he won at Nashville. When I was at Phoenix, he won at Phoenix. When I was at Charlotte and in the truck race, he won at Charlotte. So where I go, Ross kind of has a tendency to get a dub.
Are you kidding me?
I'm just
How did you not start this segment with that?
I don't know. I just thought about it. It just hit me. I thought about it the other day. It was like, I feel like I've seen the same guy win, and then it hit me. He doesn't win much, and he's been winning every time I go. So it should be on, like the gambling podcast guys said. You should have led with that. I know I should have led with that. My brain doesn't always think. Listen, I'm about to be 35. I'm trending in a different direction. I got my memory. I got to bring it back. So it came back.
Well, I'll tell you this. If he were to win, I guess either one, right? For the sake of our conversation tonight, trucks. But if he were to win either one of these races that you're down there for, we're going to have to start getting sponsored by a watermelon company or something, or buy you some Ross Chastain swag, dude.
I think I'll be on the pit box of Ross's next race. I mean, because I'll be at the 600, so maybe he does something there. You never know. I could be their winning ticket. Now I work for Trackhouse. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be pretty sick. All right. Well, let me hit you because I know I'm on the clock here and we're running out of time. Let me hit you with a guy that I think you might like, but I'm hitting you with a matchup between two of your guys. Okay.
Ooh,
so I want to see.
Ben Rhodes is one.
Well, it's not Ben Rhodes. No.
Okay.
A Busch Light watermelon would be pretty sick.
That would be pretty. That they got to do that. I'm even interested in that.
Yeah. How about Lane Riggs versus Rajah Caruth? This is an interesting one, and
Okay.
I'm on Riggs. This is more so kind of like blind faith situation more than anything. You know, we saw Rajah a little bit. You know, we have a little bit more data on Rajah on these like style tracks. And one of the starting points here for this bet to me, when you're diving into it, is win the race. Ryan Stevens, his pre-qualifying ranks. This is the biggest discrepancy on any head-to-head that we have. Most of the bets that are out there are pretty dead on. Like the books did a good job, like on the head-to-heads, the guys, you know, on these pre-qualifying ranks on win the race, they're like right next to each other. Lane Riggs is ranked 6th. Rajah Caruth 13th. That's a 7-point difference there. Riggs finished 15th at Martinsville this year. Caruth beat him. He finished 7th in that race. So tough look, right? If you're like, hey, Phil, like, what's the deal here? Riggs started 3rd, and he coming into the season, you were saying it, dude. Like, he's that short track guy, right? Like IRP. He had some success in the past. Like, these are the types of tracks that he was hired to run in that truck and do well. So Martinsville, obviously like 15th, but he started well. The race didn't end up the way he wanted it to go this year. And he looked good. He was 9th in green flag speed. That was better than Caruth's green flag speed this year. He finished 10th at Bristol, not a comp track, but still short track guy. And Bristol was his only top 10 of the season. So the other thing about him, like I said, not necessarily like blind faith here for Riggs, but he's been starting better. They've been better off the truck recently. 4 of his last 5 races, he's been starting in the top 10. That's a good adjustment from the first half of the season. So we're starting to see maybe a little bit of a building situation here, building some momentum here for Lane Riggs off the truck. Can he do it in the race? Put together a good practice, put together a good qualifying. He qualified well at Martinsville, like we said. Now, you know, do the same thing and put a race together. I think that will beat Rajah Caruth in this race. You know, Rajah got caught up in that wreck last year. We can't really rely too heavily on the data from last year's race for him. But because he was caught up in the wreck there, I believe, with like Eckes and Ankrum and the rest of them. But either way, Riggs, I think, is someone to, you know, keep your eye on in general. And I was thinking like, well, do I really trust him for a top 5? Like, that's a bit of a tough ask. And then I saw this matchup and I was like, okay, they were minus 115. He's down to minus 130. So clearly other people agree. Yeah. And I'm looking at Caruth. Like, he started 23rd last year. He finished 34th. Not saying like that's the end all be all, but you know, it wasn't fantastic. So we'll see. I mean, good green flag speed out of Riggs at Martinsville this year. We'll see if he can get it done. So any thoughts on that matchup? Because you like both those guys in general. You've been on both those guys.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, I've had a good feel. I feel like through the course of the year on both those guys, and I like Riggs. And Riggs is a guy. He's going to be double dipping. He's doing the late model. I know there's a lot of rain and things there, so he's going to get some track time, much needed for him. But this is his comfort, kind of like you were saying earlier about, hey, this is just a place for him where he's very comfortable with. I have no problem backing him here at all. You found that matchup where exactly? Caesars, I would assume, correct?
That was on Caesars, I believe. I don't have it written down, but I'm pretty sure.
Minus 135 right now for Lane Riggs. I don't know what you got it at. Maybe this is another one. So 2 of your matchups there ballooned up where you got good value when you did. So it's going to be
I still believe in it though. And I still think that like, look, I get it. Like, that number is a lot different than what I took it at. So that sucks. But let's just say, let's play this out. Like, Lane Riggs goes out and performs really well in practice and qualifying. That number is going to go to minus 150. And to my point about Martinsville being a good comparison, right? Last year, Caruth's green flag speed at Martinsville, 26. His green flag speed at North Wilkesboro, 27th. This year, his green flag speed at Martinsville, 14th. Better.
Yeah.
And he finished better than that. He finished like 8th or 7th or something. But I think what I'm seeing here is like, it's pretty, like we can make an educated guess that he's going to run mid-pack, like you know, and I expect Riggs, like this is a race that
This is it.
They need it for their team's confidence. So I think it's more of a desperation situation here for that team.
And the other thing too, because everybody that's listening, whether you're live or listening via the replay on YouTube or X or podcast form, whatever it is, you know, DraftKings has not released any of their matchups, any of their odds yet. So, which is, you know, a whole different story for a different day. But you got to imagine before practice and qualifying, which is in, you know, a little over 14 hours away from right now, they're going to have something published. And when they do, you know, they're going to have their odds out as it is. Whether they do a copy and paste format or they just take it and say, hey, here's who we put up against. Here's our pricing. We haven't had anything bet on or bet against yet. That's where we're going to be able to take advantage of stuff we're saying here to those books that haven't listed it yet, that are about to release. I think that's where it comes in for stuff like that. Now, we were also talking about Riggs. Just wanted to get your thoughts before we move on to the next guy. But Lane Riggs at plus 250, top 5. Is that something worthwhile? Is that, you know, maybe stay away like you're saying? Maybe he's going to be in that maybe 7 to 12 range, and you think that beats Caruth. But anything here, top 5, worth it at all, or just stay away?
Here's the thing. Riggs, I feel like needs a perfect race to finish top 5 and cash that bet. I don't think he needs a perfect race to beat Rajah Caruth.
They don't have the speed.
They could both run into problems, and I think they both very easily could run into problems at this race. And I just trust, I think, off the truck and Riggs's abilities speak better to him in that matchup. I just don't trust him to finish top 5. If he runs the race, like Andrew said in the chat, like he got spun 3 times at Martinsville and then ended up finishing 15th. Like if he runs a solid race, like he's going to be in the top 5. I would think. There's a reason why Ryan Stevens has him ranked 6th, but
good point.
We haven't seen it yet. So, you know,
I think it happens this week.
I'll have him beat one driver and cash that ticket for me. And then we know moving forward.
I think it's great. I'm in for that. So minus 135, where it's currently priced on Caesars. You know, Phil says he likes that. That's definitely still something that he would buy it at. Who's the next guy you want to talk about? I got you on the clock here.
I'm on the clock. We still got to get to driver group game, which I've already filled out as a placeholder. Perfect. So that should go pretty smoothly. But so last matchup and then an outright kind of combo pick, and then we'll couple quick hitters. I'll move as fast as I can here. The last head-to-head that I had was Nick Sanchez over Sammy Smith. And, you know, Nick beat him at Martinsville. Smith did not impress me. He let me down. I spoke highly of Sammy Smith going into Martinsville, and he just did not race as well as I thought. Meanwhile, Nick Sanchez was 3rd in green flag speed in that race earlier this year. Sammy Smith was 14th. Sanchez, you know, just a decent enough finish. I guess he was on a good pace last year, but didn't get, let me pull up his exact finish here. I think he might have finished like down the pack. He finished 30th, but he got caught up in something there. So he didn't get the finishes he deserves. That is if I could read my own handwriting here. This is a new year though. And stats, you know, show 5 of the last 6 starts for Nick Sanchez were in the top 5, including 2 poles. And that is important on a track where it's tough to pass. There's rain involved, short race, possibly, and he's a tough driver to pass. So I think he's going to be someone that's fast off the truck. Meanwhile, you've got Sammy Smith dipping down, you know, he's in the 7 truck, but like, it's not a given, as we learned at Martinsville. So Sammy Smith, he could be good, but I think Nick Sanchez is just kind of more locked in right now with like his craft. And, you know, he's a full-time driver saying, hey, you know, I'm in it to win the race here.
Right.
He's got 1 top 5, 4 top 10s in the 6 comp tracks that I'm using this week. So Nick Sanchez, I think he's worth playing over Sammy Smith, and that's on Caesars, I believe, as well. I think that's the one at the top of the board, and they're both going off at minus 115. If you wait on that, I'd be shocked if Sanchez is starting behind Smith this weekend. His speed has been very fast in qualifying. So that's where, I feel like we have a chance now to get it at minus 115. And we'll see. I would expect that to get ballooned up a little bit. So
One thing with one thing with Sanchez, obviously, given the pit penalty, and I'll clarify this. I think this is just me remembering, but given the pit penalties last week and the failures of inspections, I think he loses his pit stall this week. Might play a little bit of a factor, but that was just something that I kind of remembered because he had the pole, had to start in the rear, and usually that affects Xfinity and trucks the week after. So maybe just watch for that storyline.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out. So yeah, that, if you're on the fence about that matchup, then that would be something to push you over the other way.
And it's on Caesars and Bet365.
That's one that I've seen across. Like Bovada just came out with some odds recently, and so some of these guys, like the top 5 on Majeski is minus 120 on Bovada as well. So like Bovada is starting to step up their game a little bit.
Yep.
I just want to call out Eckes and Heim. We haven't talked about them yet. You could get both of them, either one to win the race at plus 115 on Caesars. I don't know how that math shakes out, what they are to win the race individually. If you just take like 2 units and spread it out, I think in that case, you'd be probably cheering for the one who's the longer odds. To me, it just keeps it easy, keeps it simple. I put like double units down on either one of those 2 to win the race, and I feel like I'm covered. And then I'm playing the rest of the bets, top 5s and head-to-heads, because I have my insurance on the 2 big dogs getting it done. They've got track time. Their stats are phenomenal in the comp tracks. Heim, like SC mentioned, won in the rain on Martinsville, similar track.
Tire test.
See that tire test. They've seen this track already compared to these other guys, so it's very important. And Eckes has 2 wins on these comp tracks, 3 top 5s. So just that's how I'm playing those guys and just kind of placing that bet. It's almost like Kyle Busch in the field, right? I placed that bet, forget about it. Now, who else can I bet on?
Find that value.
Throughout the field?
Yep.
You mentioned like long shots. How about Caden Honeycutt? We saw what he did last week, I believe it was, right? Like he's 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago,
Kansas.
starting to, a different racetrack, understand, but he's someone who, if you're looking at the green flag,
he's going to be racing last year in late model stuff this week at Wilkesboro, so he's going to have track time.
Yeah. Where is he? Is he not in? What's going on?
I don't think I saw him in the.
What the hell? Is he not racing this week?
It's okay, but we talked about him for the late models. If anybody can bet late models.
Oh my God!
So move away from him.
Taylor Gray.
Yep.
6th at Martinsville. He's kind of like forgotten this week. Like as far as the odds are concerned, like he's usually someone that the guys call out. And he's like, as far as like giving us options to choose from, and Taylor's not really on many like head-to-head matchups or group bets or anything like that. So kind of seems forgotten. He's 12 to 1 to pulling this is what happens when I don't write stuff down. He's plus 190 to finish top 5, which Taylor Gray, we've said he's coming alive, and this is just an opportunity to take a peek, right? Keep your eye on Taylor Gray on Friday in practice, qualifying, see what you think about him, and then maybe place your bet after what you see what he's got. And then how about the Brendan Queen? 9 to 1 to finish top 5. I'm throwing a tiny little nugget on that. I mean, why the hell not? The one truck is serviceable. We saw what Bubba Wallace did last year. I'm not comparing the 2 drivers by any means, but he clearly knows what he's doing at this racetrack, and he's in a really solid truck. So 9 to 1 to have a little fun. I'll throw that in there. Who cares?
Can I throw in my favorite head-to-head before you get to anything else?
Go ahead, man.
Bet365. Tanner Gray versus Jake Garcia. This guy, Tanner Gray, has finished top 10 in 4 of the last 5 races or 3 of the last 4 races. Math is kind of 4 of the last 5. So all over the place in that top 10 market. I think top 10 obviously beats Jake Garcia. Right now, he's their favorite. He's the underdog right now at minus 110. I love that. I think he's just continuing to thrive. So that is my favorite head-to-head that I'm able to bring to the show here tonight. But where are we going next?
Well, I'm in on that. I'm in on that. That's Bet365 because Jake Garcia has been a complete goose egg this year. He's been
Yes.
completely useless for us. And Tanner Gray, like you said, is also stepping up, and
Yeah.
he's got more experience
Yep.
overall. So great call out. How about, and the last thing I'll mention is Troy calling out Ankrum. I love Ankrum this week. I just don't know how to play him. I really, I can't put my finger on like how to handle him.
Yeah.
He was in a match or a group bet with Chase Purdy, and Ankrum is the reason why I don't want to take Purdy in that group bet. It's because but Ankrum, it's the same kind of story now, like different equipment with the comp tracks from the past years.
Yeah.
What does he really have? Ankrum was very fast at Martinsville this year. He was fourth in green flag speed. So there's something there for Ankrum. So yeah, I like Ankrum. I just don't know how to play him yet. And I'm hoping it kind of comes to us as the weekend unfolds.
Perfect. Driver group game. Is that where you want to go
Driver group
next?
game. Let's hit it. And let's maybe that's how we're going to talk about Ankrum. I will try to share my screen here.
Yep.
If it works, it works. I've already laid out, to try to save us some time, I've already laid out a template for a roster. And, we're playing against the guys, Cody and Rod, on the NASCAR gambling podcast, and they've been putting a whooping on us. We're down by quite a bit, so we need to make up some ground. We're going to throw Ty Majeski in this week.
Perfect.
I don't know if they're going to play Ty too often in this game, so we're going to try to maybe make up some ground there, and hopefully Ty can put it together. I've got Lane Riggs in there for all the reasons I said about him. I've got Tyler Ankrum in there for what we were just saying about him. And the D group is where it really gets shitty. I don't know what to do. I want to save my Rajah Caruths. So I've got Jack Wood in there, which is garbage, but like Jack, someone that he's not a full-time driver. So it's kind of a, you're saving some of these other D drivers for later. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one, but tough one to.
It is. Where's Tanner Gray at? He's not C, is he?
Tanner, no, dude. The C group is like absolute garbage. Give me
Would
one
anybody
second.
Like Almirola or anybody?
No, so that's the other thing. Like last year when I played this on my own, they would have like those guys.
Queen.
Yeah, those guys that are like random one-offs, they would show up in here. But this year, for whatever reason, they're not showing up. They used to show up as D driver or C drivers rather. And this year they're not. So yeah, Tanner is a B driver.
Forget it. Yeah. Andrew asked a good question. Connor Jones worth a look in Group C in a Thor Sport truck at all, Phil?
Oh, Connor Jones. Yes, I would take that.
Is he a C driver?
Yes, he's a C driver, and we've got all the starts in the world with him. Andrew, I would take
Andrew,
that.
You talked us into it.
Let's take a peek, just real quick. Connor Jones. 1 second. I want to see. I know he raced in last year's race, right? Just trying to see. Oh, maybe he didn't. In any case, Connor Jones did show up somewhere. He's got a couple top 20s in the comp track. So, for your C driver, if he can finish 20th, he's got an 18th, he's got a 20th. So yeah, I would be interested in Connor Jones outside of Jack Wood. Like Jack Wood he keeps burning us.
Let's do that. Connor Jones it is. So
all right. Good stuff.
I like that. So awesome. Well, Phil, I appreciate it. And tell everybody where they can follow and support you. And to everybody that watched this live and listening to the replay before practice, qualifying in the race, thank you. But Phil, tell everybody where they can find you and support you.
Yeah, Full Tank Phil on Instagram and X, and Full Tank Phil's name of the podcast. Going to be a busy week next week, man. So happy birthday to you. Next week's going to be my birthday week. The greatest day in motorsports next Sunday. That's my birthday. So a lot of pods to get to next week, dude. I've got the Speedway Steve 2 guys coming on to break down all 3 races. I'm going to be on with Tino next week for the front stretch pod for that. A lot of stuff going on next week. So yeah, give me a follow and we'll keep track of everything that's going on next week.
I like that. Well, make sure you follow Phil on not only on X but Instagram as well. Follow the podcast that he does each and every week when the Cup Series is running a points race, because you didn't do one this week and you were getting back from your trip. So also follow me at Derek Yoder _ on X, NASCAR Betting Preview Show at NASCAR BPS on X as well. Download the NASCAR Betting Preview Show podcast wherever you get your podcast. We'll make sure we have things out each and every week, and make sure you follow our friends over here at In Between Media, because without them we wouldn't be able to do stuff like this. So thank you, Seth. And thank you to everybody over there. Make sure you subscribe, as they're getting to 1,000 followers, which would be so cool. Such a monumental thing for them. So, Phil, without further ado, I mean, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. And best of luck to you this weekend. And thanks again to everybody for listening. And, we'll catch you next week as the series goes to Charlotte.